Listen up, wrestling fans. Today we're diving into the career of Brady Boone, born Dean Robert Peters, a man who could flip through the air like a gymnast, but somehow always landed in the shadows. You might not remember him from the big moments because, well, the WWF didn't exactly know what to do with a guy who could do backflips while the main eventers lumbered around like they were in quicksand. Boone was a gymnast in high school, a fact that mattered more than his booking ever did. He turned that agility into a wrestling style that made every match he touched slightly more interesting, but also slightly unfair to anyone trying to pin him down. Despite winning tag titles in Pacific Northwest Wrestling and performing as the acrobatic Battle Cat, Boone's career was a series of almosts and fleeting opportunities. This is a story about talent that got buried under bad booking, and about a man whose influence on future high flyers is invisible but undeniable. Grab your popcorn. Brady Boone's story is high-flying, tragic, and absolutely savage. If this is the short-form video, click below for the full version. Now let's get right into it. Alright, let's talk Brady Boone. Born Dean Robert Peters in 1960 in Minnesota, he grew up in the same hometown as Mr. Perfect and Rick Rude. So right from the start, he was swimming with sharks and occasionally getting chomped. A standout gymnast in high school, Boone had flips and agility most of the roster only dreamed of. He turned that into wrestling, but in true WWF fashion, they didn't know what to do with someone who could actually move. Boone debuted in 1984 with Don Owens' NWA Pacific Northwest Wrestling. He quickly won the tag titles twice, first with Coco Samoa, then with Ricky Santana. Not bad for a young high flyer. But when he hit the WWF in 1987, the story changed. He mostly wrestled opening matches, doing everything possible to make mid-carders look good while the big stars strutted in their egos. His Battle Cat gimmick in 1990 let him show his gymnastic chops, backflips, dives, acrobatics, but lasted as long as a sugar cube in hot tea. Behind the scenes, Boone wasn't bitter, just underutilized. Management apparently preferred lumbering wrestlers who could barely get over a second rope. Fellow wrestlers respected him. Most said he was safe, agile, and actually fun to work with. But being fun to work with didn't equal main event money. Boone's frustration was real, but he stayed professional. Despite it all, Boone's influence lingered. Future stars like Rob Van Dam took cues from his moves, though few remembered his name. His story is a mix of talent, wasted opportunity, and quiet inspiration. He may not have headlined WrestleMania, but he reminded the world that some wrestlers can fly higher than the spotlight will ever allow. And let's be honest, he flipped higher than half the WWF's attention span. Brady Boone arrived in the WWF in 1987, ready to dazzle, only to find himself booked like a background extra in a soap opera. The WWF was a circus of egos, and Boone, despite his athleticism, was treated like the guy holding the ladder while Hulk Hogan monologued. He was fast, agile, and technically sound, but apparently that wasn't flashy enough for Vince's vision of sports entertainment. Boone's high-flying style, which could have made him stand out, often clashed with the more traditional lumbering wrestlers of the time. Some reports suggest that bigger stars viewed him as showy or a risk to their safety, a classic case of backstage insecurity meeting actual talent. Boone reportedly kept his cool, but you could tell he was frustrated by the lack of opportunity. His Battle Cat gimmick in 1990 was meant to showcase him, but it lasted only a few weeks. One week, he was backflipping over opponents. The next, he was gone, like a gymnast disappearing into the shadows. Backstage, Boone was respected by those who worked with him. Wrestlers praised him for being safe and professional, which, in the WWF locker room, sometimes made you invisible. Management, however, didn't seem to care much about finesse. They wanted marketable characters, not a guy who could make a mid-carder look like a stunt double in Cirque du Soleil. Boone had talent spilling out of every pore, but the WWF booking had a way of bottling it up. Even in limited TV time, Boone left impressions. Fans noticed his aerial moves, and wrestlers noticed his reliability. Despite the frustration, he never lashed out publicly, keeping the heat contained to whispered backstage gripes. And let's be real, being the safest guy in a room full of egos doesn't get you a title shot. It gets you coffee duty and polite applause. Before we go any further, hit that like button and subscribe. Don't be like Vince McMahon ignoring Brady Boone's talent. Actually notice the good stuff in front of you. Every click keeps these stories alive. And unlike Boone's Battle Cat gimmick, this channel isn't going anywhere. Before the WWF treated him like a curtain jerker, Brady Boone was lighting up the Pacific Northwest. He started working for Don Owens' promotion in 1984, and this is where people first saw just how different he was. Boone didn't wrestle like a traditional territory guy. He wrestled like a gymnast who'd accidentally stumbled into a fight. His agility was insane, and fans immediately noticed he brought something fresh to the scene. In 1986, Boone struck gold twice. First, he won the NWA Pacific Northwest Tag Team Championship with Coco Samoa in March, then repeated the feat with Ricky Santana in October. That's not bad for a guy who, at the time, still looked more like a college athlete than a grizzled territory brawler. The crowds in Portland weren't used to backflips and lightning-quick counters, but Boone gave them exactly that. He wasn't just wrestling, he was ahead of the curve. Of course, even success came with limitations. Boone was billed as the cousin of Billy Jack Haynes, a storyline connection designed to boost him. Did it help? A little. But it also boxed him into someone else's shadow, like being the warm-up act for a band no one bought tickets to see. Boone was talented enough to shine without that gimmick, but promoters love those family connections. The Pacific Northwest days showed Boone's potential, but they also foreshadowed his future problem, being great in the ring while management saw him as an accessory. Still, his work in that territory proved he could hang with anyone, and it gave him credibility when Vince came calling. Boone was clearly the guy you wanted to watch, if only someone gave him the platform. Instead, his career was like one long gymnastics routine. Amazing execution, but no judges paying attention. The Battle Cat era. WWF saw Brady Boone, a gymnast turned wrestler with insane aerial skills, and thought, yeah, let's put him in a furry catsuit. That'll do it. Genius, right? Nothing screams top-tier athlete like a guy prancing around like a giant Halloween costume, performing flips no one asked for. Boone had already proven himself in the territories, tag titles, fast-paced matches, a reputation for being safe yet exciting. But WWF didn't care. They didn't want him to shine. They wanted him to be cute, marketable, and utterly forgettable. Battle Cat lasted a few weeks, giving Boone the kind of exposure usually reserved for opening match filler and mid-card let's try something weird experiments. Meanwhile, bigger stars strutted around, hardly moving, while the guy who could actually pull off backflips and hold a match together got stuck in a costume that could have been rented from Party City. Management's vision of what fans wanted apparently didn't include talent or skill, just fuzzy gimmicks and clever merchandising ideas. Boone's frustration was real. He was ready to innovate and push the high-flying style into the mainstream, but WWF shoved him into a corner. Still, he kept professional, did his job, and made the gimmick as watchable as it could be, which, let's be honest, wasn't saying much. In the end, Battle Cat proved one thing. WWF doesn't reward talent, they reward ideas that look cute on a toy shelf. Boone had the moves, the skill, and the brains, but WWF only had a catsuit. Brady Boone's story didn't end with Battle Cat, it just drifted into the background while the WWF's main eventers hogged the spotlight. After his short-lived gimmick, Boone bounced around smaller promotions, including a stint in WCW where he was competent, agile, and still too talented to be treated like filler. It's the kind of career that makes you shake your head. A guy with skill, charisma, and aerial wizardry, yet constantly booked like an afterthought. Backstage, Boone was respected. Wrestlers knew he was safe, reliable, and genuinely fun to work with. A rare commodity in a locker room full of divas and egos. But in an era when the company valued size over skill, charisma over craft, Boone's contributions went largely unnoticed. Still, his influence trickled down. High flyers like Rob Van Dam and other cruiserweights carried pieces of Boone's style into bigger arenas, even if his name didn't make the marquee. Tragically, Boone passed away in 1998 at just 37 years old, leaving behind a story full of unrealized potential. The wrestling world lost not just a talented performer, but a man who quietly set a blueprint for athletic, high-flying wrestlers in an era dominated by big men and cartoonish gimmicks. On December 15, 1998, Brady Boone, born Dean Robert Peters, died in a car accident while driving home to Tampa, Florida, from a WCW television taping in Orlando. He was 40 years old. Boone had been working as a referee for the WCW after his wrestling career wound down. Tragically, his life was cut short during this drive, leaving the wrestling world in shock. Despite his smaller stature, Boone had a significant impact on the wrestling community. He was known for his athleticism and high-flying style, which influenced many future stars, including Rob Van Dam. Van Dam has credited Boone with helping him early in his career and introducing him to the opportunities in Japan. In tribute, Van Dam incorporated some of Boone's moves into his own repertoire. Following Boone's death, WCW acknowledged his passing with a brief tribute on their television program. However, the company did not provide a significant public memorial. This lack of recognition was noted by some in the wrestling community, highlighting the industry's sometimes fleeting acknowledgement of talent. Boone is buried in an unmarked grave at Trinity Memorial Gardens in Trinity, Florida. His untimely death remains a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the often overlooked contributions of wrestlers who don't always make the headlines. Boone's career was a series of flips, impressive, precise, but too often landing in obscurity. And maybe that's the cruelest irony. The guy who could soar higher than almost anyone in the ring was constantly held down by booking, bad gimmicks, and a company that didn't know how to use him. And let's be honest, if talent alone got titles, Brady Boone would have had more gold than Hogan. Brady Boone's career was a masterclass in unrealized potential. A gymnast in a world of giants, he flipped, soared, and innovated while WWE's booking team clutched their catsuits and ignored him. From Pacific Northwest tag titles to Battle Cat's fleeting fame, Boone left an impression on anyone paying attention, which, sadly, wasn't always the company. His influence on future high flyers is invisible but undeniable, and his story is a reminder that wrestling can chew up talent faster than a finishing move. Well, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Smash that like button and subscribe, and help keep these forgotten legends in the spotlight. Thanks for watching.